Christmas, I had discovered Appcraft. I wanted something like Scratch. I love Scratch. The learning that happens with it, and this was the closest thing I could find. So this is like Scratch. This will bring out that same type of learning. But it was very, very beta at that time. No information on there, and the very few tutorials that were on there were all in Japanese, and instructions were all in Japanese, and a lot of things did not work. Works both on the iPod Touch and the iPad, but the sound didn't work. And I said, okay, this isn't mature, but hopefully it will mature. And I created a wiki called appcraftwikispaces.com. What it does not have that Scratch has is the community for collaboration, downloading other people's games, or at least did not then. But I took everything that I have been thinking about, that Mitch Resnick, my hero, has been talking about. I said, can we create community around this toy for people who have these, so we don't lose what we had with Scratch for kids who have these devices? So that was my mission back in January. The kids want to learn how to program apps. Well, programming apps, has anybody tried it here? I'm working on it just to get that concept, and it is not naturally intuitive, but that doesn't mean kids can't be creative about developing apps prototypes. I think like engineering has pre-engineering, I think Appcraft is to apps programming, the pre-apps programming piece. So I brought it to Rhonda. Could we find an on-ramp for this for kids to try it? I don't know how it's going to work with kids. She graciously allowed us to do this. At first she's like, I've never done anything like this. I've never done Scratch, which I think made her an even better test pilot for this.
So when Lucie approached me to do this unit on Appcraft, I was very reluctant because I had no experience with it whatsoever. And then after talking with Lucie, she agreed to kick it off with students and with myself, so then I reluctantly agreed. But the agreement with students was that we would learn together. They knew that I was coming at it with no experience, and we all agreed that we would use each other as resources, as well as Lucie. So once we started it with the first lesson, what I found is half the group shut down after the first day because they thought it was stupid, they thought it was hard, they didn't see the purpose. And so what I realized afterwards, at the end of the day, when I was reflecting on how well it went, first of all, the students that shut down were primarily females, which is kind of interesting. But then they shut down because they didn't experience any success whatsoever based on what we had introduced. So we repeated the same lesson the second day, used students who had success to co-teach or to pair up with students who were really struggling. And honestly, after that, my job was much easier because they were all engaged. So every day after that, they would come in, and they were very enthusiastic because they experienced success, they understood what its potential was, and they just kept building on that together. So it quickly changed to the dynamics of the classroom changed rather drastically.
I think you can take over afterward.
Okay, thank you. So we established, here's how intrinsic their learning became. We established last Friday as a deadline. Well, let me go back a little bit further. April vacation. I've never received so many emails from students saying, can you help me figure this out? Or do you know if John has the script for this? Or I saw Rebecca's script and it looked similar to what I want to do. We were all just bouncing off each other script and sharing ideas because we were the only resource that we knew of. So during the April vacation, they were creating games, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And we had established last Friday as our deadline for the games, and we had a showcase day. And what they did was, as a result of seeing other students' games, they were projecting off the Apple TV and sharing games. As a result, they spent the weekend tweaking their games to make them that much better. So when I came in last Monday anticipating that we were going to be moving on to new concepts, the lesson plan was just thrown out the window because the enthusiasm was so high for them to want to share and showcase what they completed over the weekend that we decided to turn it into our last showcase day. So we had to revisit our plan as a result. So I'm just going to show you a couple of games that they created. They learned how to apply physics and gravity. They learned X and Y values and how to plot those X and Y values. They learned cause and effect. They created if statements. So if I hit this, what's going to happen? And so to be able to demonstrate it using a device, I think is so much better. Hopefully it'll work. So this is a game that a student created. And tapping play actually takes you into game mode. And she's established gravity where the goal is to eat the cupcakes. And there's different levels, so I don't know if, because I missed that other cupcake, what's going to happen, but I'm going to come down here.
And notice it's working with a sensor of her iPad.
So tipping the iPad is the object, and she's got several levels on here that she's created. This is very complex. I think even for a 7th grade student, this is extremely complex, but they were so into it that they spent hours upon hours. Now this one, the object is to collect keys to unlock passageways to the next level. And what they don't realize is that they're programming.
Right.
And we came back to that afterwards. So then she built in 2 other screens to play again her main menu. So that's just one example. I have many. This is the free version of Appcraft. One of the downsides is that you do get their, I call them Japanese commercials. You do get their pop-up ads often. Let's see. This one had a similar concept.
While we're on the finance, that we have a directory of some of the students' games on our presentation that you can see some of them.
So again, this one's pretty easy to do. Well, I should say that. I shouldn't say that because watch me fail. And what I found was kids just were drawn. They were passing devices around so that they could play each other's games. And see, I lost. So what it is we didn't have any criteria that I was grading them on because I had never used this app myself. So what we did was halfway through, we stopped and said, okay, what makes up a good game? Or what would make up a good interactive animation? And we talked about all of those criteria, and then we included those in a rubric that we used to assess their final projects. But the enthusiasm is where I was going. I don't know that I've ever seen it so high. And so I asked the students, would you have preferred to have a manual or resource that they could have used? And the response speaks volumes to me. And the response, I'll make it larger. No, because I had to work harder to figure it out on my own. I know I just lost it, sorry. Had to work harder to figure it out on my own. I learned more and enjoyed it more as a result of having to work so hard. So I thought that really did sum it up quite nicely. I just popped this up there as a sample of one of the scripts. That's just one actor in a game that contained many, and that's the script the student wrote. So again, going back to, it's an entry level into programming. Students don't realize they're programming, they're just seeing cause and effect, but they really are learning some valuable skills.
And if I can throw in on top of what Rhonda is saying, we don't have iPads in the hands of our students yet, but we do some programming, and we've used Game Maker, which is a PC program that lets you make games. And I showed this to one of my students who is a very talented game maker, and he played with it some, and he said, well, you know, I'm enjoying writing programming now, so I don't really know that this is what I want to do. So of course, being a good computer teacher, I said, okay, there's got to be something on the iPad. There is a program called Code A. I downloaded Code A, an app called Code A. I downloaded it. I could not make head nor tails out of it. It's all this gibberish. I actually handed it to the child, and he immediately started creating with it. So even for kids who are programmers, 2 years ago I would have said programmers cannot possibly use one of these. He was programming. He was making his first game in Code A.
First of all, I gave them very little support. I'm district-wide, and I got her started, and then I actually got Fletcher School started. They're a K-6. And I spent exactly 2 meetings briefly with some kids, got them started, came back, gave them my tutorial. YouTube was blocked at their school, so I actually used PhotoSync to get them off my iPad and send them. And that's all I did with those 2 kids. The day before this presentation, I was at Fletcher School, and I noticed the kids walking around with Appcraft on their devices. They can't take theirs home. And I said, oh, what are you making? They showed me their games. 2 6th graders. Phenomenal. They've been working on this, not at home, because they don't have one-to-one at home, during recess and other times. And I asked if I could show them, and they were like, oh, I don't think so. And I thought they were shy. I had to sign a non-compete to even look at it. They were afraid somebody was going to steal their game. So I can't show that one. But excellent. We do have a little directory there that you can look at, and then I think the other thing that I heard from your kids when I was interviewing them, or when you were debriefing them, a couple things really surprised me. One didn't. I said, so why did you like this over some, because these games are really cool. Do you think they would have said that if I had just shown them those games and they had not created them? they were cool because they created them, and they thought they were the coolest games on earth. And so I've been reading Jonah Lehra's book, Imagine How Creativity Works, and I pulled this quote out. Be part of the creativity pipeline. I leave you with this challenge. He says that our nation is great at exporting athletic genius. Okay, but we need to, why are they good at that? Because we've created a pipeline, starting with little kids, to groom them, and then they play against each other, and we drive our kids so they can play against better kids. And so I thought that it is our challenge to be part of the system that creates the creativity pipeline, the same kind of system.